in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Cracks. Mitchell Roth had built his life like he built everything else, methodically, deliberately, and with an unshakable foundation. At 38, he owned 3 successful construction companies across the state, employed over 200 people, and had never backed down from a fight worth fighting. His reputation in the industry was legendary. Fair but unforgiving, generous to loyalty but ruthless to betrayal. The scar running from his left temple to his jaw told a story most people whispered about. A rival contractor who tried to sabotage one of Mitchell's projects had learned the hard way that crossing Mitchell Roth came with consequences. The man had spent 6 months in the hospital and lost his business. Mitchell had made sure of both. His marriage to Vera Fry had seemed like another successful venture. She was beautiful, intelligent, and came from a respectable family. They'd met at a charity gala where her father, a prominent banker, was raising funds for veterans. Vera had been volunteering, serving drinks with a smile that could disarm anyone. Mitchell, fresh from his second military deployment and building his first company, had been captivated by her grace and apparent kindness. That was 13 years ago. Now, as Mitchell sat in his black Silverado outside his mother's modest ranch house, he reflected on how carefully Vera had played her role. The devoted wife during his business struggles, the supportive partner during his mother's cancer treatment, the perfect mother to their son Tyler. But perfection, Mitchell had learned in construction, was often a facade hiding structural damage. The signs had been subtle at first. Vera's sudden interest in fitness classes that ran late into the evening. New clothes she claimed were gifts from her sister. Her phone that never left her side, protected by a passcode she'd never needed before. Most telling was her newfound critique of Mitchell's violent tendencies, the very strength that had protected their family and built their wealth. "You scare people, Mitchell," she'd said during their last real conversation. "Tyler shouldn't grow up thinking that's normal." What she didn't understand was that fear was respect. It was protection. It was the only language that predators understood. Mitchell's mother, Marjorie Roth, lived 20 miles outside the city on 10 acres of land Mitchell had bought her after his father's death. At 72, she was still sharp as a blade and twice as cutting when she needed to be. She'd been watching Tyler for the week while Mitchell handled a major project in Denver, or so Vera thought. The real reason for his trip had been a meeting with Wade Warner, a private investigator who specialized in matrimonial cases. Wade was expensive, discreet, and thorough. His report, delivered that morning in a manila envelope, contained photographs, bank statements, and a timeline that painted a picture of betrayal spanning 8 months. Vera wasn't just having an affair. She was systematically preparing to destroy him. The man in the photographs was Christopher Warren, a real estate developer from the next county. Handsome in a polished way that contrasted sharply with Mitchell's rough edges, Christopher came from old money and had never worked a day of actual labor in his life. His family owned shopping centers and office complexes, the kind of properties that Mitchell's companies had built but could never afford to own. But what made Mitchell's blood run cold wasn't the intimate photos of Vera and Christopher in hotel rooms. It was the documents showing Vera had been feeding Christopher information about Mitchell's business operations, upcoming bids, and client relationships. Christopher had used this intelligence to underbid Mitchell on 3 major projects, costing him nearly $2 million in lost revenue. The betrayal was complete, personal, financial, and strategic. As Mitchell parked his truck and walked toward his mother's house, he could see Tyler through the living room window, playing video games on the couch. His son, tall for 11, with Mitchell's dark hair and Vera's green eyes, was the one pure thing in his life. Tyler didn't know that his world was about to shatter, or that his mother had been planning to take him away from everything he'd ever known. The custody papers Wade had uncovered showed Vera's true intention. Full custody, supervised visitation only, and a claim that Mitchell's history of violence and unpredictable behavior made him unfit for unsupervised parental contact. She wanted to take his son and paint him as a monster. Christopher Warren wanted to destroy his business empire. Neither of them understood who they were dealing with. Mitchell had learned early in his military service that the most effective battles were won before the enemy realized they were at war. He'd spent the last 3 weeks not just gathering intelligence, but preparing the battlefield. As he reached for the door handle, Mitchell's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife is very talented. Shame you'll never get to appreciate her skills again." See, Mitchell read the message twice, then deleted it. Christopher Warren had just made his first tactical error, revealing that he knew Mitchell was investigating. It told Mitchell that either Vera or Christopher had discovered Wade's surveillance, which meant they were getting careless. Carelessness was something Mitchell never suffered from. He opened the door to find his mother in the kitchen, Flower dusting her apron as she prepared Tyler's favorite cookies. The normalcy of the scene, the smell of vanilla, the sound of Tyler's laughter from the living room, the soft hum of his mother's old radio, stood in stark contrast to the storm building in Mitchell's mind. "You're early," Marjorie said without looking up from her mixing bowl. "I thought you weren't coming until Sunday." Plans changed. Mitchell kissed her cheek, noting how she stiffened slightly. His mother had always been able to read him like a blueprint. "The same way your marriage plans are changing." Mitchell stopped mid-step. "What do you know about that?" Marjorie set down her spoon and turned to face him. Her gray eyes, the same shade as Mitchell's, held a mixture of sympathy and steel. "I know that your wife called here yesterday, asking strange questions about Tyler's school records and medical history. I know she's been driving a different car this week, one I've seen parked at the Marriott downtown. And I know that look in your eyes, son. It's the same look your father had when he found out his business partner was stealing from him. What did Dad do about it?" A small smile played at the corners of Marjorie's mouth. "He ruined him completely. Made sure everyone in town knew exactly what kind of man he really was. Your father never believed in half measures when it came to betrayal." Mitchell nodded slowly. The apple, as they said, didn't fall far from the tree. "How much does Tyler know?" "Nothing yet. But he's not stupid, Mitchell. He's been asking why his mother doesn't call as much, why you've been working so late, why everyone seems angry all the time." From a living room came the sound of Tyler's game ending, followed by his voice calling out, "Dad, is that you?" Mitchell straightened his shoulders and walked into the living room, his son's face lighting up at the sight of him. Tyler jumped up from the couch and wrapped his arms around Mitchell's waist in a fierce hug. "I missed you, Dad. Mom said you were working on something really important." "I am, buddy. The most important thing I've ever worked on." As Mitchell held his son, he felt the last piece of his old life slip away. The man who had tried to save his marriage, who had hoped for reconciliation, who had believed in second chances. That man died in his mother's living room while his son hugged him and his wife's betrayal burned at his pocket. What emerged was someone far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Chapter 2. The Architect of Ruin. The Marriott Hotel on 5th Street had always been Christopher Warren's preferred venue for conducting business, both legitimate and otherwise. Its discreet parking, soundproof suites, and management that understood the value of selective blindness made it perfect for meetings that required privacy. Christopher Warren was 35, handsome in a way that came from good genetics and better personal trainers, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. He'd inherited his father's real estate empire, expanded it through calculated risks and strategic marriages, and viewed the world as a chessboard where people like Mitchell Roth were pawns to be sacrificed. Vera Roth was supposed to be his queen. "You're paranoid," Vera said, pacing naked across the hotel suite's marble floor. Even angry, she was stunning, all curves and fire, with auburn hair that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Mitchell doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy playing with his trucks and dirt piles to notice what's happening at home. Christopher adjusted his silk tie and checked his Rolex, a habit that betrayed his nervousness despite his confident words. "Your husband sent a private investigator to follow us. Vera. Wade Warner. I know because I've used him myself." Impossible. Mitchell would have confronted me by now if he knew. He's not subtle about these things. That was where Vera was wrong, and Christopher was beginning to understand it. He'd spent months studying Mitchell Roth, learning about his business practices, his reputation, his methods. What he'd initially dismissed as simple brutality was actually sophisticated psychological warfare. Mitchell didn't just destroy his enemies. He made them destroy themselves. "Tell me about the scar," Christopher said suddenly. Vera stopped pacing. "What scar?" "The one on his face." "How'd he get it?" "Why does that matter now?" "Because I need to understand what we're dealing with. You've been married to him for 13 years. You must know." Vera sank into the suite's leather armchair, suddenly looking older than her 34 years. 5 years ago, a contractor named Dale McBride tried to sabotage one of Mitchell's projects. He loosened bolts on scaffolding, could have killed someone. Mitchell found out and confronted him at a construction site after hours. And Dale came at him with a crowbar, caught Mitchell across the face before Mitchell could react. Vera's voice grew quiet, but Mitchell didn't go down. He took the crowbar away and beat Dale so badly that the man spent months in the hospital. Then, while Dale was recovering, Mitchell systematically destroyed his business, called in favors, spread word about Dale's safety violations, made sure he never worked in construction again. Jesus. The worst part? Mitchell visited Dale in the hospital every day, brought flowers, asked about his family, even paid some of his medical bills. Dale thought Mitchell was showing mercy. Vera laughed bitterly. He was wrong. Mitchell was making sure Dale understood exactly who was responsible for his destruction. Kindness as torture. Christopher felt a chill run down his spine. He'd built his strategy around the assumption that Mitchell was a simple man who solved problems with direct violence. This was something far more sophisticated. "Maybe we should slow down," he said. "Wait until after your divorce is final, too." "No." Vera's voice turned sharp. "I'm not spending another day in that house, pretending to be the grateful wife of some blue-collar thug. I've already filed the papers. My lawyer says with the evidence we've compiled about his violent tendencies, I'll get full custody and a significant settlement." Christopher nodded, though his confidence was wavering. "What about the business intelligence you've been gathering? Maybe we should stop using it." "Are you serious?" "That information has helped you steal 3 major contracts from him. We've cost him millions. There's no going back now, Christopher." She was right, and that terrified him. They'd crossed a line that men like Mitchell Roth never forgave. Christopher had built his career on understanding risk, and every instinct he developed told him they were in mortal danger. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Unknown number. Your girlfriend has excellent taste in hotels. Room 1247 has lovely views. Mr." Christopher's blood turned to ice. Mitchell Roth knew exactly where they were, and he'd made sure they knew he knew. "We need to leave," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Now." "What's wrong?" Christopher showed her the message. Vera read it twice, her face growing pale. "This is good," she said finally. "Good? He knows where we are. It means he's losing control. Mitchell's strength has always been his patience. He plans everything, thinks 3 steps ahead. This message is emotional, impulsive. It means we're getting to him." Christopher wasn't convinced, but Vera was already gathering her clothes. As she dressed, she talked through their strategy with the cold calculation that had first attracted him to her. "The divorce papers are filed. My lawyer has documented evidence of his threats, his history of violence, his unstable behavior. This message actually helps our case. It shows he's stalking us. What if he doesn't play by legal rules?" Vera paused in the middle of buttoning her blouse. "Then we make sure everyone knows what kind of monster he really is. My father has connections in law enforcement, the media, the business community. We destroy his reputation first, then his business, then his freedom." As they prepare to leave, Christopher felt a moment of genuine fear for the first time in years. He'd built his life around the belief that money and connections could solve any problem. But Mitchell Roth wasn't a problem. He was a force of nature. The elevator ride down was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they reached the parking garage that Christopher realized they were walking into a trap. The garage was too quiet. Their cars, Christopher's BMW and Vera's new Mercedes, sat side by side in the dim light, but something felt wrong. Christopher's instincts, honed by years of high-stakes business deals, screamed danger. "Wait," he said, grabbing Vera's arm. That's when they saw him. Mitchell Roth stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, moving with the casual confidence of a man who owned his surroundings. He was dressed in his usual work clothes, jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt, but there was nothing casual about the way he carried himself. This was a predator in his element. Going somewhere, Mitchell's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Christopher's hand moved toward his phone, but Mitchell shook his head. I wouldn't. There's no self-service down here anyway. I had it temporarily disrupted for our conversation. Mitchell, please, Vera started, but her husband cut her off with a look. 13 years, Mitchell said, his gray eyes fixed on Christopher. 13 years I provided for her, protected her, built a life that most people can only dream of. And this is how she repays me, by feeding information to a parasite who's never built anything in his life. You don't understand, Christopher said. Vera and I understand perfectly. You saw an opportunity to use my wife to destroy my business while stealing my son. You thought I was too stupid to figure it out, too crude to stop you. Mitchell smiled, and Christopher felt his bladder clench. You were wrong on all counts. Vera stepped forward, trying to position herself between the two men. Mitchell, we can work this out. The marriage is over, but we can handle this civilly. For Tyler's sake. Tyler, Mitchell repeated slowly. My son, who you've been planning to steal from me. My son, who you've been telling lies about his father to. My son, who's going to learn what his mother really is. You can't prove anything, Vera said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mitchell pulled out his phone and played a recording. Vera's voice filled the garage, crystal clear. Mitchell's getting suspicious, but he's too focused on his work to dig deep. I need those bid specifications by Thursday so Christopher can undercut him on the Riverside project. Vera's face went white. How did you? Your car has been bugged for 2 months. Your phones, your computers, this hotel room. I know everything, Vera. Every lie, every betrayal, every plan. Mitchell's voice never rose above conversational level, which somehow made it more terrifying. I know about the custody papers, the allegations of domestic violence, the character assassination you've been planning. Christopher found his voice. What do you want? Justice, Mitchell said simply. But we'll start with consequences. That's when they noticed the smell. Gasoline, faint but getting stronger. What did you do? Vera whispered. Mitchell checked his watch. In about 10 minutes, both of your cars are going to experience catastrophic engine failures. Nothing dangerous, of course, just expensive. Very expensive. Consider it a down payment. You're insane, Christopher said. No, I'm methodical. The same way I was methodical when I discovered that your real estate empire is built on a foundation of debt and leveraged properties. The same way I was methodical when I learned that Vera's been stealing from her own charity foundation to fund her new lifestyle. Both Vera and Christopher stared at him in shock. Oh yes, I know about that too. $40,000 diverted from the children's cancer charity your father helps run. Imagine how disappointed he'll be to learn his daughter is a thief as well as an adulteress. Mitchell turned and began walking toward the stairwell. This ends one of 2 ways, he called over his shoulder. You can try to fight me and lose everything, or you can run away and only lose most things. Choose wisely. As his footsteps echoed up the stairwell, Christopher and Vera stood frozen in the garage, the smell of gasoline growing stronger around them. They were beginning to understand that they hadn't seduced and betrayed Mitchell Roth. They'd awaken him. Chapter 3, The Gathering Storm. Tyler Roth was building a Lego fortress when his world began to collapse. The 11-year-old had inherited his father's methodical nature and his mother's attention to detail, creating elaborate structures that rivaled anything in the instruction manuals. This particular fortress was his masterpiece, complete with ramparts, a working drawbridge, and tiny cannons that actually fired plastic projectiles. That's incredible, buddy, Mitchell said, settling onto the floor beside his son in Marjorie's living room. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, creating the kind of peaceful domestic scene that belonged in family photos. Tell me about the defensive capabilities. Tyler's eyes lit up as he began explaining the fortress's strategic advantages, unaware that his father was mentally cataloging every detail. not of the Lego construction, but of his son's character, his intelligence, his innate understanding of protection and security. The towers are positioned so defenders can provide covering fire for the main gate, Tyler explained, moving tiny plastic soldiers into position. And see this? There's a secret tunnel that leads outside the walls in case the defenders need to escape or launch a surprise attack. Mitchell smiled despite the darkness growing in his chest. His son was a natural strategist, already thinking like someone who understood that sometimes you had to fight dirty to protect what mattered. "Your mom called while you were in the garage," Marjorie said from the kitchen doorway. "She wants to pick Tyler up tonight instead of Sunday." Mitchell's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "What did you tell her?" "That she'd have to discuss it with you." Tyler looked up from his fortress, confusion clouding his young features. "Why will Mom change the plan?" "She said she had to work this weekend." "Sometimes plans change, buddy. Don't worry about it." But Tyler was too smart to be dismissed so easily. "Are you and Mom fighting?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that hadn't yet been discovered. Mitchell had promised himself he would never lie to his son, but the truth would destroy Tyler's childhood in ways that couldn't be undone. "Your mother and I have some things to work out," Mitchell said carefully. "But whatever happens between us, nothing changes how much I love you." "Nothing." Tyler nodded solemnly, then returned to his fortress. But Mitchell caught the way his son's hands trembled slightly as he positioned the defenders, and he felt something dark and primal surge in his chest. Vera wasn't just betraying him. She was traumatizing their child with her recklessness and selfishness. Mitchell's phone buzzed with a text from Christopher Warren. "We need to talk. Tonight, 8 p.m. at the construction site on Riverside. Come alone." A second message followed immediately from Vera. "Mitchell, please don't do anything we'll all regret. Think about Tyler." The irony of Vera asking him to think about Tyler while she planned to steal him and destroy his relationship with his father wasn't lost on Mitchell. But her reaching out meant the hotel incident had rattled them both. "Good. Fear made people make mistakes. I need to step outside and make some calls," Mitchell told his mother. Marjorie nodded, her experienced eyes reading the storm clouds gathering in her son's expression. "Tyler, want to help me finish these cookies?" As Tyler eagerly followed his grandmother to the kitchen, Mitchell stepped on the front porch and dialed Wade Warner's number. "They want a meeting," Mitchell said when the investigator answered. "Where?" "My construction site on Riverside. Tonight at 8. That's not coincidence. Warren's been trying to get that property for months. His father's shopping center development depends on acquiring that land." Mitchell felt pieces clicking into place. "What aren't you telling me, Wade? I've been digging deeper into Warren's finances. He's not just interested in destroying your business. He needs that Riverside property specifically. Without it, his family's development project fails, and they lose about $50 million in investments. So this was never about Vera. Oh, it's about her too. But Warren's playing a longer game. He seduced your wife to get access to your business information, cost you money on other projects to weaken your position. And now he's forcing a confrontation on the one piece of property that could save or destroy his family's empire." Mitchell stared across his mother's property, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. In the distance, storm clouds were building, a fitting metaphor for what was coming. How desperate is he? Desperate enough to have hired private security. 3 men with military backgrounds. "I'm sending you their files now." Mitchell's phone chimed with incoming photos and documents. Marcus Cole, former Army Ranger. Jason Barr, ex-Navy SEAL. Eugene Field, retired Delta Force. All of them had worked for private military contractors after their service. All of them had questionable records, and all of them were currently on Christopher Warren's payroll. "They're not just security," Wade continued. "They're elimination specialists. Warren's not planning to negotiate tonight." Mitchell felt a familiar calm settle over him, the same feeling he'd experienced before every dangerous mission during his military service. Some people panicked when violence became inevitable. Mitchell had always found it clarifying. "Keep monitoring their communications. If this goes sideways, I need you to make sure Tyler is protected. Mitchell, maybe you should consider involving law enforcement. The same law enforcement that Warren's family has been contributing to for 20 years. The same cops who will find a way to make this my fault when they discover 3 dead mercenaries. Mitchell's voice was cold. "No, Wade. This ends tonight, but it ends on my terms." After hanging up, Mitchell made 2 more calls. The first was to Clint Campbell, his foreman and the closest thing he had to a brother. Clint had served 2 tours in Afghanistan with Mitchell and understood that some problems couldn't be solved with words. The second call was to Steve Carver, a lawyer who specialized in the kind of legal problems that arose when civilized solutions failed. By the time Mitchell returned to the house, Tyler was proudly displaying a batch of fresh chocolate chip cookies. The sight of his son's innocent smile hardened Mitchell's resolve like steel cooled in ice water. "Dad, can we work on the fortress tomorrow? I want to add another tower." "Absolutely. We'll build the biggest, strongest fortress you can imagine." As Tyler ran off to wash his hands, Marjorie approached her son with the expression she'd worn when he'd come home bloodied from fights as a child. "How bad is this going to get?" "Bad enough that you should take Tyler to your sister's house in Colorado for a few weeks." "Tonight." Marjorie nodded without argument. She'd been married to a man who'd fought his own wars in business and knew when retreat was the better part of valor. "When you're done with whatever you have to do," she said quietly, "you make sure you come back to that boy. He's going to need his father more than ever." "I'll come back," Mitchell promised. "But I might not be the same man who leaves." As evening approached, Mitchell helped his mother pack Tyler's things while explaining that they were going on an adventure to see Aunt Virginia in the mountains. Tyler was excited about the unexpected trip, chattering about hiking and fishing while Mitchell memorized every detail of his son's face. When the time came to say goodbye, Tyler hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, buddy. More than you'll ever know." As his mother's car disappeared down the dark country road with the most important person in his world safely inside, Mitchell walked to his truck and removed a canvas bag from behind the driver's seat. Inside were tools he'd hoped never to use again: night vision goggles, tactical knife, Kevlar vest, and the .45 caliber pistol he'd carried through 2 war zones. But these weren't the most dangerous weapons at his disposal. Those were his intelligence, his patience, and his absolute willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect his son and destroy his enemies. At 7:30 p.m., Mitchell Roth drove toward the Riverside construction site, leaving behind the man who believed in laws and civilization and second chances. What arrived would be something far more primitive and infinitely more dangerous. Chapter 4. Into the Killing Ground. The Riverside construction site sprawled across 15 acres of prime real estate like a skeleton waiting for flesh. Massive earth-moving equipment sat silent in the moonlight, and half-completed foundation walls cast jagged shadows across the torn ground. Mitchell had been developing this property for 2 years, planning a mixed-use complex that would anchor the city's eastern expansion. Now it was about to become a battleground. Mitchell arrived 30 minutes early, parking his truck a quarter-mile away and approaching on foot through the adjacent wooded area. His night vision goggles turned the darkness into green-tinted clarity, revealing the tactical nightmare Christopher Warren had chosen for their confrontation. 3 vehicles were already positioned around the site. Warren's BMW near the main entrance, a black SUV hidden behind stacks of construction materials, and a van positioned to block the only other exit. Professional placement that confirmed Wade's intelligence about hired mercenaries. Through his scope, Mitchell counted 4 figures: Christopher Warren standing near his car, checking his watch nervously, and 3 others positioned in a triangle formation that would provide overlapping fields of fire. They were dressed in dark tactical gear and moved with the precise economy of trained killers. But Warren had made a critical error in his choice of venue. This was Mitchell's territory, built with his own hands, and he knew every pipe, every foundation wall, every piece of equipment that could provide cover or concealment. More importantly, he knew about the network of drainage tunnels that ran beneath the entire site. Mitchell's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife is safe with us. Come alone and unarmed, or she dies." A second message followed with a photo, Vera bound to a chair in what looked like a construction trailer, her mouth covered with duct tape. Her eyes were wide with terror above the gag. Mitchell studied the image carefully. The trailer was one of his own, a temporary office he'd been using during the early phases of construction. It was currently positioned near the center of the site, which meant Warren's people had had hours to prepare their ambush. But Mitchell also noticed something Warren's mercenaries had missed. The reflection in the trailer's window showed part of the drainage tunnel entrance he'd installed the previous month. If Vera was really in that trailer, he had a way to reach her that they wouldn't expect. At exactly 8 p.m., Mitchell emerged from the tree line with his hands visible, walking slowly toward the main entrance where Christopher Warren waited. The developer was trying to project confidence, but Mitchell could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted to the hidden positions of his hired guns. "Where is she?" Mitchell called out when he was 50 yards away. "Safe, for now," Warren replied. "But that depends entirely on your cooperation. What do you want?" "Everything. Your business, your assets, your construction contracts. Most importantly, this property." Warren gestured at the development site around them. "You're going to sign it over to me tonight." Mitchell continued his approach, mentally cataloging the positions of the three mercenaries. Marcus Cole was behind a concrete mixer to the east. Jason Barr had positioned himself on top of a crane platform with a sniper rifle, and Eugene Field was crouched behind stacked steel beams to the west. "And if I refuse, then your wife dies, and you'll be blamed for her murder. We have security footage of you threatening her, recordings of your violent outbursts, documented evidence of your history of brutality. The police will find your fingerprints on the murder weapon and your DNA at the scene." "Very thorough," Mitchell said, stopping 20 feet from Warren. "There's just one problem with your plan." "What's that?" "I don't negotiate with dead men." Warren's confident smile faltered. "You're unarmed and outnumbered 3-1 by professionals. This is over, Roth. You made the same mistake everyone makes when they try to intimidate me," Mitchell said conversationally. "You assumed I was here to save Vera." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Warren's face went pale as the implications sank in. "You see, Christopher, I stopped loving my wife the moment I discovered her betrayal. She's already dead to me. You just saved me the trouble of filing divorce papers." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Think about what you know of my history. When Dale McBride tried to destroy me, did I try to reason with him? When contractors tried to cheat me, did I forgive and forget? I told you this would end one of two ways. You chose poorly." Warren fumbled for his radio. "Take him down. Take him down now." But Mitchell was already moving. The first shot came from Jason Barr on the crane platform, the bullet whistling past Mitchell's ear as he dove behind a pile of concrete blocks. The sniper was good, but he was positioned for intimidation rather than a clean kill shot. Mitchell's response wasn't a bullet. It was the diesel generator that powered the site security lights. A single well-placed rock triggered the emergency shutdown, plunging the entire area into darkness. "Night vision." Cole's voice crackled over their radio frequency. "Switch to night vision." But Mitchell had been planning this for weeks. The secondary explosions that followed weren't random. They were strategically placed charges he'd installed in the site's electrical systems, creating a series of brilliant flashes that would overload any night vision equipment. In the chaos of strobing lights and shouted commands, Mitchell slipped into the drainage tunnel system he designed to carry rainwater away from the construction site. The concrete tubes were large enough for a man to crawl through and connected to inspection chambers throughout the property. He emerged 50 yards away, behind Eugene Field's position. The former Delta Force operative was good, but he was focused on the last known position of his target rather than the approach he'd never considered. Mitchell's knife slid between Field's ribs with surgical precision, piercing his heart and ending his threat without a sound. As the mercenary collapsed, Mitchell appropriated his weapons and radio equipment. "Field, report," Cole's voice demanded over the radio. Mitchell keyed the transmitter with Field's voice modulation device, a piece of equipment Wade had procured for situations exactly like this one. "Target moving east toward your position. I'm flanking from the south." "Copy that." But Mitchell wasn't moving east. He was already climbing the crane that held Jason Barr. The sniper was focused on the ground below, searching for movement among the construction equipment. He never heard Mitchell's approach until the knife found the base of his skull. "Two down, one to go." "Barr, Cole, report." Warren's voice was approaching panic over the radio. Mitchell used Barr's radio position to triangulate Cole's location, then moved through the tunnel system to approach from an unexpected angle. But Marcus Cole had finally realized something was wrong and had shifted to a defensive position near the trailer where Vera was supposedly being held. Through his appropriated night vision goggles, Mitchell could see Cole scanning the perimeter with military precision. The man was dangerous and alert. A direct assault would be risky. That's when Mitchell noticed the construction crane positioned directly above the trailer. 5 minutes later, Cole's radio crackled with Jason Barr's voice. "I've got movement in the trailer. The woman's trying to escape." Cole's head turned toward the trailer for just a moment, but it was enough. The crane's wrecking ball, released from 60 feet above, crashed through the trailer's roof with devastating force. When the dust settled, Mitchell found Cole's body in the wreckage, crushed by debris from the collapsing structure. But there was no sign of Vera. Very impressive. Christopher Warren's voice called from somewhere in the darkness. "But you were wrong about one thing, Roth. I never had your wife." Mitchell emerged from the shadows, Warren's voice leading him to a position near the main gate. The developer was standing beside his BMW, no longer trying to hide his fear. "The photo was taken months ago, during our first meeting here. Vera's perfectly safe, probably wondering where you've disappeared to." Warren's voice was shaking now. "You just murdered 3 men for nothing." "Not for nothing," Mitchell said quietly. "For justice. They were just hired security. They were killers who threatened my family. But you're right about one thing. I was wrong to think this was about saving Vera." Mitchell stepped closer, and Warren could see his face clearly for the first time. The expression there made Warren's knees go weak. This was about sending a message. What message? That anyone who tries to destroy what I've built will pay with everything they have. Warren fumbled for his car keys. "This is over. I'm leaving. You can keep your property, your business, everything. Just let me go." "No," Mitchell said simply. "You crossed a line when you used my wife to gather intelligence. You crossed another line when you cost me millions in lost contracts. But you crossed the final line when you threatened my son's future." Warren's hand found his car door handle. "I never touched your son. But you plan to. The custody battle, the allegations of domestic violence, the systematic destruction of my reputation, all of it designed to take Tyler away from me. That's unforgivable." Warren yanked open his car door, but the engine had been disabled hours earlier. As he frantically turned the key, nothing happened. "You see, Christopher, there's something you never understood about men like me. We don't just build things, we think about how to destroy them. Every structure, every system, every plan has vulnerabilities if you know where to look." Mitchell reached into Warren's car and dragged the developer out by his shirt collar. Warren swung wildly, connecting with Mitchell's jaw, but it was like hitting a concrete wall. Your real estate empire, your family's investments, your personal reputation, all of it depends on a foundation of debt and leveraged assets. Very fragile when the right pressure is applied. Mitchell's first punch broke Warren's nose. The second cracked his ribs. By the third, Warren was begging. "Please, I'll give you everything, the contracts, the information Vera provided, anything you want." "I don't want your contracts," Mitchell said, lifting Warren by his throat. "I want you to understand that there are consequences for betrayal." When it was over, Christopher Warren was alive but broken, physically, financially, and psychologically. He would live, but he would never again threaten what belonged to Mitchell Roth. As sirens wailed in the distance, Mitchell melted back into the shadows, leaving behind a crime scene that would puzzle investigators for years to come. He had work to finish. Chapter 5. The Web Unravels. The emergency room at St. Mary's Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as paramedics wheeled Christopher Warren through the automatic doors. His face was a mask of bruises and bandages, his left arm cradled in a makeshift sling, and his eyes held the hollow look of a man who'd seen his own mortality up close. Dr. Elaine Cowan, the trauma surgeon on duty, took one look at Warren's injuries and ordered a full workup. Multiple contusions, 2 broken ribs, fractured nose, severe concussion, and what appeared to be psychological trauma that went far beyond the physical damage. "What happened to him?" she asked the paramedic. "Found him at a construction site. claims he was attacked by multiple assailants during a robbery. Police are already investigating. But when Detective Omar McCabe arrived to take Warren's statement, the story began to fall apart. "You were meeting with Mitchell Roth at 8 p.m., McCabe said, reading from his notes. "But you claim you were robbed by unknown assailants?" Warren's swollen eyes darted nervously around the hospital room. I must have been confused. The head injury. Mr. Warren, we found 3 bodies at that construction site. All of them professional soldiers with weapons and military equipment. This wasn't a random robbery. McCabe was a 20-year veteran of the police force who'd seen every type of violence the city had to offer. What he'd found at the Riverside site was something else entirely. Precise, calculated, and executed with military efficiency. "I want a lawyer," Warren whispered. "That's your right. But Mr. Warren, whoever did this to you left you alive for a reason. That suggests this isn't over." As McCabe left the hospital, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was investigating the opening act of something much larger and more dangerous. 20 miles away, in the law offices of Steve Carver, Mitchell Roth sat across from his attorney in a mahogany-paneled conference room that had witnessed dozens of battles fought with contracts instead of weapons. "The police have been asking questions," Steve said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the morning's developments. "Warren's story doesn't match the evidence, but they're still investigating. Let them investigate. They won't find anything that leads back to me." Steve Carver had been representing Mitchell for 8 years, handling everything from construction disputes to regulatory challenges. He was one of the few people who truly understood the methodical way Mitchell approached problems, both legal and otherwise. "What about Vera? What about her?" "Mitchell, she's still your wife. She's going to figure out that something happened to Warren, and she's going to assume you were responsible." Mitchell's expression didn't change. "She'd be right to assume that. This could complicate the divorce proceedings. If she can paint you as violent or unstable, she won't have the opportunity." Mitchell pulled out his phone and played a recording. Vera's voice filled the conference room, crystal clear and damning. "Christopher, I need you to understand. If Mitchell ever finds out about us, he'll kill you. He's not stable like other men. When he feels betrayed, he becomes something else entirely." Steve listened to 10 minutes of recorded conversations between Vera and Christopher Warren, each one more damaging than the last. Vera discussing Mitchell's business strategies, revealing confidential client information, and actively planning to destroy his reputation during their divorce proceedings. "Where did you get these?" "Let's just say that technology has made marital surveillance much easier than it used to be." "Mitchell, this is enough to end any custody battle before it starts. No judge would award custody to a mother who is actively working to harm her child's father." "I know, but I want more than just custody. I want justice." Steve leaned back in his leather chair, studying his client's face. In 8 years of legal representation, he'd never seen Mitchell look quite this cold and focused. "What kind of justice?" "The kind that ensures this never happens again. To me, to Tyler, or to anyone else who might trust the wrong people." That afternoon, while Warren was being questioned by police and Mitchell was planning his next moves, Vera Roth was having lunch with her father at the country club, where she'd grown up playing tennis and learning to navigate high society. Philip Alvarez was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the kind of quiet authority that came from 30 years of managing other people's money. He'd built his banking empire through careful investments and strategic partnerships, and he'd always been proud of his daughter's intelligence and ambition. That pride was about to be tested. "You look tired, sweetheart," Philip said as they settled at their usual table overlooking the golf course. "Everything all right at home?" Vera had been dreading this conversation, but she needed her father's support for what was coming. "Dad, I need to tell you something about Mitchell and me. I suspected there were problems. He seemed distant at the charity dinner last month. We're getting divorced." Philip set down his coffee cup with practiced calm. "I'm sorry to hear that. Mitchell's a good man, even if he could be rough around the edges." "What happened?" "We grew apart. He's become more violent, more unpredictable. I'm afraid of what he might do to Tyler. Or to me." It was a carefully crafted version of the truth, designed to elicit sympathy without revealing the full extent of her betrayal. But Philip Alvarez hadn't built a banking empire by accepting surface explanations. Vera, I've known Mitchell for 13 years. He's never raised his voice in my presence, never shown anything but respect for you and love for Tyler. Weren't you telling me? Dad, please. I just need your support through this. The lawyers say that with Mitchell's history of violence, I should be able to get full custody and a significant settlement. What history of violence? The incident with that contractor 5 years ago? The man who tried to kill someone by sabotaging construction equipment. Vera realized she'd underestimated her father's knowledge of Mitchell's business dealings. Philip had always made it his business to know about the men who married into his family. There have been other incidents. No, there haven't. Philip's voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to separating truth from fiction. Vera, what have you done? The question hung between them like a sword waiting to fall. In that moment, Vera realized that her father already suspected the truth. I met someone else. Ooh, Christopher Warren, the real estate developer. Philip's face went white. Jesus Christ, Vera, do you have any idea what you've done? What do you mean? Christopher Warren is a parasite who's been trying to destroy legitimate businesses in this region for years. His family's development projects are built on debt and corruption. If Mitchell finds out, he already knows. The color drained completely from Philip's face. How do you know he knows? Christopher was attacked last night. He's in the hospital. It had to be Mitchell. Philip stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. We're leaving. Now. Dad, what's wrong? What's wrong is that you've started a war with a man who doesn't lose wars. What's wrong is that you've involved our family in something that could destroy everything I've spent 30 years building. As I walked quickly toward the exit, Philip's phone rang. The caller ID showed Steve Carver's office. Mr. Alvarez, this is Steve Carver. I represent Mitchell Roth. We need to discuss some financial irregularities that have come to our attention regarding your daughter and the Children's Cancer Foundation. Philip closed his eyes, understanding that the nightmare was just beginning. What kind of irregularities? The kind that involve federal charges for embezzlement of charitable funds. Mr. Roth would like to meet with you this evening to discuss how this matter might be resolved without involving law enforcement. Vera listened to her father's side of the conversation with growing horror. Mitchell hadn't just discovered her affair. He'd uncovered everything. Dad, what's happening? Philip ended the call and looked at his daughter with a mixture of anger and disappointment that cut deeper than any physical wound. What's happening, Vera, is that you've given Mitchell Roth everything he needs to destroy our entire family. And based on what I know about that man, he's just getting started. As they drove away from the country club, Vera finally began to understand that she hadn't been playing a game of seduction and betrayal with her husband. She'd been playing with forces that were about to consume everything she'd ever known. Chapter 6, The Reckoning Begins. The Children's Cancer Foundation occupied a modest brick building on the outskirts of the financial district, its walls decorated with artwork created by young patients and photographs of families who'd found hope in their darkest hours. For 15 years, the foundation had provided support to families facing childhood cancer, funded research, and offered grants for experimental treatments. It was also where Vera Roth had been systematically stealing money to fund her affair with Christopher Warren. Mitchell sat in the foundation's conference room at 6 a.m., reviewing financial documents with the organization's board of directors. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged invoices, redirected payments, and a pattern of theft that had cost the foundation nearly $40,000 over 8 months. I can't believe it, said Dr. Miranda Hubbard, the foundation's medical director. She was a woman in her 50s who dedicated her life to helping sick children, and the betrayal was written clearly across her face. Vera has been with us for 5 years. She organized our biggest fundraising events, which gave her access to the financial systems, added Theodore Spencer, the foundation's treasurer and a longtime friend of Philip Alvarez. She knew exactly how to manipulate the accounting to hide the theft. Mitchell spread out copies of bank records showing where the stolen money had gone. Luxury hotel stays, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, and cash withdrawals that coincided with Vera's meetings with Christopher Warren. The question now, Mitchell said quietly, is how we handle this. I could turn this evidence over to the FBI, who would prosecute Vera for federal embezzlement charges. She'd face 5 to 10 years in prison. What's the alternative? Dr. Hubbard asked. I make full restitution to the foundation, double the amount stolen, and we handle this privately. No criminal charges, no public scandal, no damage to the foundation's reputation. Theodore Spencer leaned forward. What do you want in return? Justice, but not the kind that comes from courts and judges. Dr. Hubbard studied Mitchell's face, trying to read his intentions. She'd known him for years through his charitable contributions and had always found him to be direct but fair in his dealings. Mr. Roth, we appreciate your offer to make restitution, but we can't simply ignore criminal behavior. These families depend on our foundation, and they'll continue to depend on you. But consider what a public scandal would do to your fundraising efforts, your volunteers, your reputation in the medical community. Sometimes private justice serves the greater good better than public prosecution. Mitchell pulled out his checkbook and wrote a check for $80,000, double the amount Vera had stolen. He placed it on the table where everyone could see it. This is about more than money, he continued. It's about ensuring that people who betray trust face consequences that matter. Vera will lose everything she values: her marriage, her social standing, her access to the lifestyle she's grown accustomed to. But she'll retain her freedom and the ability to rebuild her life. What about her relationship with your son? Dr. Hubbard asked gently. For the first time, Mitchell's controlled facade cracked slightly. Tyler will know the truth about his mother, but he'll also understand that people can change. If Vera chooses to earn redemption, she'll have the opportunity. If she chooses to continue down her current path. He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. The board voted unanimously to accept Mitchell's offer. As the meeting concluded, Mitchell's phone buzzed with a text from Wade Warner. Vera just left her father's house. She's heading to the hospital to see Warren. Mitchell smiled grimly. Vera was making this easier than he'd anticipated. St. Mary's Hospital had increased security around Christopher Warren's room after the previous night's incident, but money and connections could overcome most obstacles. Vera arrived with flowers and a visitor's pass obtained through her father's influence with the hospital board. She found Warren propped up in bed, looking like he'd been run over by construction equipment, which in a metaphorical sense he had been. Christopher, what happened? The police said you were attacked during a robbery, but it was him, Warren whispered, his voice barely audible through his swollen lips. Your husband. He knew everything. Vera felt the room spinning around her. That's impossible. Mitchell would have confronted me directly if he knew. He's not subtle about these things. You don't understand what he's capable of. Those men I hired for protection, they're dead. Vera. All of them. Professional soldiers, and he killed them like they were nothing. You're confused. The head injury. I'm not confused. Warren's shout brought a nurse running, who checked his monitors and adjusted his pain medication before giving Vera a stern look about upsetting the patient. When they were alone again, Warren grabbed Vera's hand with desperate strength. He left me alive to send a message. This isn't over. He's going to destroy both of us. Vera pulled her hand away, studying Warren's battered face. What exactly did you tell him about our relationship? Nothing. He already knew everything. He had recordings, photographs, financial records. He knew about the business intelligence you've been feeding me, the stolen contracts, even the foundation money. Vera's blood turned to ice. What foundation money? The $40,000 you took from the Children's Cancer Charity. He has documentation of every transaction. The room began to spin as Vera realized the true scope of Mitchell's knowledge. He hadn't just discovered her affair. He'd uncovered every secret, every lie, every crime she'd committed in service of her betrayal. I have to go, she said, backing toward the door. Vera, don't leave me here alone. He might come back. He won't come back, she said with more confidence than she felt. Mitchell doesn't repeat himself. But as she hurried through the hospital corridors, Vera couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every stranger's glance felt like surveillance. She was right to be paranoid. Wade Warner was positioned in the hospital parking garage, photographing everyone who entered or left Warren's floor. The images were being transmitted in real time to Mitchell, who was tracking Vera's movements while simultaneously executing the next phase of his plan. At 2 p.m., Vera arrived at the law offices of Marcia McCarthy, the divorce attorney she'd hired to handle her case against Mitchell. McCarthy was known for her aggressive tactics in high-asset divorces and her willingness to destroy opposing parties through character assassination. "We need to file an emergency restraining order," Vera said, sitting across from the attorney in her downtown office. "I have reason to believe my husband attacked my friend last night." "Do you have evidence of this alleged attack?" "Christopher Warren is in the hospital with severe injuries. He was supposed to meet with Mitchell and... Supposed to meet with him about what?" Vera realized she'd walked into dangerous territory. Admitting that Christopher had been meeting with Mitchell would require explaining their relationship, which would undermine her entire divorce strategy. Business matters. Christopher is a real estate developer. Marcia McCarthy was an experienced attorney who could smell deception from across the room. "Mrs. Roth, is there something about your relationship with Mr. Warren that I should know?" "We're friends. Mitchell has been increasingly jealous and paranoid about my friendships with other men." "I see. And these business meetings between your husband and Mr. Warren, what kind of business were they conducting?" Vera found herself trapped between the truth and the lies she'd been carefully constructing. "I'm not sure about the details. Mrs. Roth, I need you to be completely honest with me if I'm going to represent you effectively. Are you having an affair with Christopher Warren?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Vera realized that her carefully planned strategy was collapsing around her. "That's not. I mean, we become close, but..." "Mrs. Roth, I'm going to give you some free advice. If you're having an extramarital affair while filing for divorce on grounds of your husband's violent behavior, you're handing him everything he needs to destroy you in court. No judge will award custody to an unfaithful mother who's been living a double life." Vera felt the walls closing in around her. But Mitchell has a history of violence. The incident with Dale McBride was a case of legitimate self-defense that was investigated and cleared by police. "Mrs. Roth, your husband's reputation in this community is that of a successful businessman who employs hundreds of people and contributes generously to charity. Your reputation, if this affair becomes public, will be that of an adulteress who betrayed her family." As Vera left the law office, she understood that her carefully planned escape route had become a trap. Mitchell hadn't just discovered her betrayal. He'd anticipated her strategy and systematically destroyed every advantage she'd thought she possessed. Her phone rang as she sat in her car in the parking garage. Unknown number. "Hello. Mrs. Roth, this is Detective Omar McCabe with the police department. I'd like to ask you some questions about Christopher Warren's attack last night." "I don't know anything about that." "Ma'am, Mr. Warren was found at your husband's construction site after what appears to have been a business meeting gone wrong. I'm trying to understand the relationship between these men." Vera closed her eyes, understanding that Mitchell had orchestrated even this call. "I think I need a lawyer." "That's your right, ma'am. But Mrs. Roth, if you have information that could help us solve this case, it would be in everyone's best interest for you to cooperate." As Vera ended the call, she realized that Mitchell had constructed a web around her that tightened with every move she made. He wasn't just seeking revenge. He was forcing her to destroy herself through her own choices and lies. For the first time since beginning her affair with Christopher Warren, Vera Roth was truly afraid. And she was right to be. Chapter 7. The Walls Close In. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Unit operated out of a sterile office building that looked more like an insurance company than the nerve center for investigating white-collar crime. Special Agent Liz DeLeon had spent 12 years following money trails through the labyrinthine world of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and financial conspiracies. She'd never encountered a case quite like this one. The anonymous tip came in this morning. Agent DeLeon explained to her partner, Agent Ken Bush, as they reviewed the materials that had been delivered to their office. Someone provided detailed evidence of embezzlement from a children's cancer charity, complete with bank records, forged invoices, and a paper trail that leads directly to Vera Roth. Ken examined the photographs of checks, bank statements, and financial documents spread across their conference table. This is incredibly thorough. Whoever compiled this evidence knew exactly what they were doing. The question is why they're giving it to us instead of handling it privately. Most charity theft cases this small get resolved internally to avoid negative publicity. Maybe the charity board decided they wanted criminal prosecution. Agent DeLeon shook her head. I called the Children's Cancer Foundation this morning. They told me the theft had been discovered and full restitution had been made by an anonymous donor. They specifically said they weren't seeking criminal charges. So someone else wants Vera Roth prosecuted. Someone with access to detailed financial records, surveillance capability, and a comprehensive understanding of how federal embezzlement cases are built. Agent DeLeon studied the evidence again. This looks like the work of a professional investigator or law enforcement. You think a cop is behind this? I think someone with resources and expertise is systematically destroying Vera Roth's life. The question is whether they're doing it for justice or revenge. Agent Bush picked up a photograph showing Vera Roth entering a luxury hotel with Christopher Warren. The anonymous tip also included evidence of an extramarital affair. Why would that be relevant to an embezzlement case? It establishes motive. If Vera Roth was stealing money to fund an affair, it shows intent and premeditation rather than simple financial desperation. Or, Agent Bush said slowly, someone is building a comprehensive case designed to destroy every aspect of her life simultaneously. Financial, legal, personal, social. They're hitting her from every angle. Agent DeLeon had been thinking the same thing. In her experience, this level of coordination and thoroughness usually came from either law enforcement agencies or extremely motivated private parties with significant resources. Let's take a closer look at the husband, she said. Mitchell Roth. What do we know about him? 30 minutes of database searches revealed a complex picture. Mitchell Roth was a successful businessman with government contracts, a military veteran with an exemplary service record, and a pillar of the local community through his charitable contributions. He also had a reputation for ruthless business practices and a documented history of violent confrontation with competitors. The Dale McBride incident, Agent Bush said, reading from the police report. Roth hospitalized a man who tried to sabotage his construction site, but the investigation cleared him of wrongdoing. McBride attacked first with a weapon. Still, it shows a pattern of resolving conflicts through violence when necessary. Agent DeLeon was beginning to form a theory about what was really happening. Ken, what if Mitchell Roth discovered his wife's affair and embezzlement, then decided to destroy her through legal channels rather than direct confrontation? That would explain the thoroughness of the evidence and the anonymous tip. It would also mean we're being used as instruments of personal revenge rather than pursuing justice. Agent Bush considered this. Does it matter? If Vera Roth committed embezzlement, she should face the consequences regardless of who exposed her. It matters because Mitchell Roth might not be finished. If he's orchestrating this level of systematic destruction, there are probably other targets on his list. Agent DeLeon's phone rang before she could elaborate on her concerns. The caller was Detective Omar McCabe from the local police department. Agent DeLeon, I understand you're investigating Vera Roth for embezzlement. I can't discuss an ongoing federal investigation, Detective. I'm calling because Mrs. Roth is connected to an assault case I'm working. Christopher Warren was attacked last night at a construction site owned by Mitchell Roth. Agent DeLeon felt pieces clicking into place. What's the nature of Mrs. Roth's connection to Mr. Warren? That's what I'm trying to determine. Warren claims he was robbed by unknown assailants, but the evidence suggests something more personal. 3 professional soldiers were killed at the scene. This wasn't a random crime. And you suspect Mitchell Roth was involved? I suspect Mitchell Roth planned and executed a military-style operation against people who threatened his family or business interests. But I can't prove it. After ending the call, Agent DeLeon understood that they weren't just investigating embezzlement. They were examining the opening moves in what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated campaign of revenge. We need to bring in Vera Roth for questioning, she told her partner, before whatever Mitchell Roth has planned next comes to fruition. But when they called Vera's home number, there was no answer. When they drove to her house, they found it empty. According to neighbors, she'd left that morning with several suitcases and hadn't returned. Vera Roth was running. Meanwhile, in a luxury hotel suite 50 miles away, Vera was discovering that running from Mitchell Roth was like trying to outrun her own shadow. Her credit cards had been canceled. Her bank accounts were frozen pending the federal investigation. Her father refused to take her calls after learning about the embezzlement charges. Even her sister in California had hung up when Vera tried to explain her situation. She was trapped in a hotel room she couldn't afford, with no money, no allies, and the growing realization that Mitchell had anticipated every move she might make. Her phone rang, the prepaid cell phone she'd bought that morning with her last $100 in cash. "Hello. Running away won't save you." Mitchell's voice was calm, conversational, almost friendly. "How did you get this number?" "The same way I got everything else, Vera. By being more thorough than you are desperate." "Mitchell, please. We can work this out. I'll give you the divorce. I won't fight for custody." "You still don't understand what you've done, do you? This was never about the divorce or custody. This is about the fact that you betrayed the only person who ever truly protected you, and you used our son as leverage in your betrayal." Vera felt tears beginning to flow. "I never meant for Tyler to get hurt. But you did hurt him. You planned to take him away from his father, to poison his relationship with me through lies and false allegations. You were willing to destroy his childhood to cover your crimes. I made mistakes. You made choices. And choices have consequences. What do you want from me?" There was a long pause before Mitchell answered. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you value. Your marriage, your money, your freedom, your reputation, your relationship with Tyler. All of it gone because you couldn't resist the temptation to betray the man who gave you everything. The FBI is investigating the foundation. If I'm convicted, you'll face 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Unless, of course, you cooperate with their investigation." "Cooperate how?" Christopher Warren's real estate empire is built on money laundering and fraud. The FBI would be very interested in detailed information about his business practices, his offshore accounts, and his family's criminal activities. Vera felt a chill run down her spine. "You want me to betray Christopher the same way I betrayed you? I want you to choose between saving yourself and protecting the man who helped you destroy our family. It's fitting, don't you think? And if I refuse, then you'll discover that federal prison is an unforgiving place for someone with your background and social standing." The line went dead, leaving Vera alone with the choice Mitchell had constructed for her. Betray Christopher Warren to save herself, or face the full consequences of her actions alone. Either way, Mitchell Roth would have his justice. Chapter 8. The Final Gambit. 3 days later, Vera Roth sat in the FBI's interrogation room. Her designer clothes wrinkled from sleeping in hotel chairs, and her perfect makeup replaced by the hollow-eyed exhaustion of someone who'd finally realized the depth of their predicament. Across the metal table, Agent Liz DeLeon studied the woman who'd once been the wife of one of the region's most powerful men. "Mrs. Roth, you're facing federal charges for embezzlement of charitable funds. The evidence against you is overwhelming. However, we're prepared to discuss a plea agreement if you can provide information about other criminal activities." "What kind of information?" Agent Ken Bush leaned forward. "We've been investigating Christopher Warren's business operations for 2 years. Financial irregularities, suspected money laundering, tax evasion. You've been in a relationship with Mr. Warren for 8 months. You would have had access to information about his business practices." Vera understood that this was the choice Mitchell had orchestrated: betray Christopher or face the full weight of federal prosecution alone. But she also realized something else. Mitchell had given her a way to survive if she was willing to take it. "Christopher's family launders money through their real estate developments," she said quietly. "I've seen the books. They use shell companies to move drug money and offshore investments through legitimate property transactions." For the next 4 hours, Vera provided detailed information about Christopher Warren's criminal empire: bank account numbers, shell company names, the locations of hidden assets, and the identities of Warren family associates involved in money laundering operations. By the time the interview concluded, The FBI had enough evidence to dismantle a multi-million-dollar criminal organization. Mrs. Roth, in exchange for your cooperation, we're prepared to recommend probation and community service instead of prison time for the embezzlement charges. What about Christopher? Will he know I provided this information? Agent DeLeon's expression was carefully neutral. Federal investigations of this scope require extensive surveillance and financial analysis. There's no reason Mr. Warren would suspect that the information came from you specifically. But Vera suspected that Mitchell would make sure Christopher knew exactly who had betrayed him. As federal agents prepared to arrest Christopher Warren and his associates, Mitchell Roth was executing the final phase of his plan from his office overlooking the city. Wade Warner sat across from him, reviewing surveillance reports and intelligence gathered over the previous month. Warren's been arrested, Wade reported. Federal charges for money laundering, tax evasion, and racketeering. He's looking at 20 to 30 years. And Vera, probation and community service. She'll testify against Warren in exchange for leniency. Mitchell nodded with satisfaction. What about Warren's business empire? Collapsing. Federal asset forfeiture will seize most of their properties. The family's legitimate businesses are bankrupt within 90 days without the illegal revenue streams. And the Riverside property? Warren's development project is dead. The investors are pulling out. The city is reviewing all permits, and the property values in that area are about to crater. Wade smiled grimly. You'll be able to buy the adjoining properties for a fraction of their previous value. Mitchell had turned his enemy's betrayal into a massive business opportunity while simultaneously destroying their ability to threaten him again. It was, Wade reflected, a masterpiece of strategic thinking. There's one more thing, Wade said. Tyler's been asking questions about why his mother isn't coming home. Mitchell's expression softened slightly, the only crack in his armor of controlled vengeance. What kind of questions? Smart questions. He knows something significant has changed, and he's trying to understand what it means for his relationship with both parents. Arrange a meeting. Somewhere neutral, somewhere he feels safe. It's time Tyler learned the truth about what his mother did. The meeting took place the following Saturday at the city park where Mitchell and Tyler had spent countless afternoons playing catch and building model rockets. Tyler was now 12 years old, tall for his age, with his father's steady gray eyes and his mother's quick intelligence. They sat on a bench overlooking the lake where ducks paddled peacefully in the afternoon sun, a scene of domestic tranquility that masked the life-altering conversation about to unfold. Dad, is Mom ever coming home? Mitchell had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, trying to find words that would convey the truth without destroying his son's ability to trust and love. Tyler, there are some things about your mother that you need to understand. For the next hour, Mitchell explained Vera's betrayal in terms a 12-year-old could comprehend. The affair, the stolen money, the plan to take Tyler away from his father through lies and false accusations. He showed Tyler some of the evidence, not to hurt him, but to help him understand that this was real and serious. Tyler listened with the concentrated attention he brought to complex problems, asking thoughtful questions and processing information with a maturity that broke Mitchell's heart. So Mom chose another man over our family? Yes. And she stole money from sick kids? Yes. And she was going to lie about you in court, so she could take me away from you? Yes. Tyler was quiet for a long time, watching the ducks and thinking through everything his father had told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but sad. I still love her, Dad, but I don't like what she did. That's exactly how you should feel. Loving someone doesn't mean accepting their bad choices. And being disappointed in someone's actions doesn't mean you stop caring about them. Will I still be able to see her? If you want a yes, but it will be different now. She'll have to earn back your trust, and that might take a long time. Tyler nodded solemnly. Dad, are you going to be okay? You seem different lately. Mitchell pulled his son closer, feeling the weight of everything he'd done to protect this relationship. I've had to make some difficult choices to keep our family safe. Sometimes being a father means doing things that are hard or painful because they're necessary. Did you hurt the man Mom was with? Mitchell considered lying, but he'd promised himself he would never lie to Tyler. Yes. He was trying to destroy our family and take you away from me. I stopped him. Good, Tyler said with surprising firmness. Nobody should be allowed to break up families. As they drove home together, Mitchell realized that Tyler had inherited not just his intelligence and determination, but also his understanding that some battles were worth fighting regardless of the cost. That evening, Mitchell received a text message from Vera. I know what you did. I know how you orchestrated everything, but I also know why you did it. Thank you for giving me a chance to save myself. I won't waste it. A second message followed. Tell Tyler I love him and I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn his forgiveness. Mitchell deleted both messages without responding. Justice had been served, his family was protected, and his enemies had been destroyed through their own choices and actions. But as he tucked Tyler into bed that night, Mitchell understood that victory had come at a cost he was only beginning to calculate. Chapter 9. Empire's End. 6 months later, Mitchell Roth stood on the observation deck of his newest office building, looking out over a city that bore the scars and rewards of his systematic dismantling of Christopher Warren's empire. The Riverside Development Project had collapsed, taking Warren family investments with it, and Mitchell had acquired the adjoining properties for his own expansion at a fraction of their former value. Justice, he reflected, could be profitable when properly executed. Tyler, now 13 and showing signs of inheriting his father's strategic mind, joined him at the window. The boy had grown taller over the past months, and his questions had become more sophisticated as he processed the dramatic changes in their family structure. Dad, Mom's parole officer called. She wants to arrange a supervised visit next week. Vera had served 4 months in minimum security federal prison before being released to complete her sentence through community service and probation. She was working at a women's shelter, living in a modest apartment, and slowly rebuilding a life that bore no resemblance to the luxury she'd once known. How do you feel about seeing her? Tyler considered the question with the thoughtfulness that had become his trademark. I think I'm ready, but I want you to be there too. Mitchell nodded. Despite everything Vera had done, you wouldn't poison Tyler's relationship with his mother. That choice belonged to Tyler alone. There's something else, Tyler continued. I've been thinking about what happened with Mom and Mr. Warren, and I have questions about what you did to stop them. Mitchell had been expecting this conversation. Tyler was too intelligent to accept simple explanations indefinitely, and he deserved to understand the full scope of what had transpired. What do you want to know? Did you kill those men at the construction site? The question hung between them like a challenge. Mitchell had promised never to lie to his son, but he also understood that some truths carried consequences that lasted lifetimes. Yes, Tyler absorbed this information without visible shock. Were they bad men? They were hired killers who threatened our family. They chose violence, and I responded with superior violence. Do you regret it? Mitchell considered this carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that your mother's choices forced me to become someone I'd hoped never to be again. But I don't regret protecting you and preserving our family. Tyler nodded slowly. Mom made choices that hurt people. You made choices that protected people. I understand the difference. The conversation was interrupted by Mitchell's phone. Wade Warner was calling with an update on the final elements of their comprehensive campaign. Christopher Warren was sentenced this morning, Wade reported. 25 years federal prison. No possibility of parole for 12 years. And his family's business interests? Completely dismantled. The Fed seized everything connected to the money laundering operation. The legitimate businesses couldn't survive without the illegal revenue streams. The Warren name is finished in this region. Mitchell felt a sense of completion. Christopher Warren would spend the best years of his life in federal prison, his family's empire destroyed, his reputation in ruins. He would emerge as an old man with nothing, if he emerged at all. There's one more thing, Wade continued. Warren's been trying to make a deal with federal prosecutors. He's offering information about other criminal organizations in exchange for a reduced sentence. Let him try. He has nothing left to trade except worthless information about activities that are already under investigation. Mitchell ended the call and returned his attention to Tyler, who was studying the city skyline with the same analytical intensity his father brought to complex problems. Dad, what happens next? For us, we build something better than what we had before. We create a life based on truth instead of lies, strength instead of weakness, loyalty instead of betrayal. And if someone tries to threaten our family again? Mitchell smiled grimly. They won't. Word has gotten around about what happens to people who cross the Roth family. We've established a reputation that will protect us for years to come. Tyler nodded with satisfaction. At 13, he already understood that respect was earned through strength and that protection required the willingness to fight for what mattered. That evening, as Mitchell reviewed business reports in his home office, he reflected on the transformation that had occurred over the past year. His marriage was over, but his relationship with Tyler was stronger than ever. His business empire had expanded significantly through the acquisition of Warren Properties. His reputation had evolved from merely successful to genuinely feared. Most importantly, he demonstrated that betrayal came with consequences that extended far beyond the immediate perpetrators. The phone rang, Vera's number. Mitchell, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to thank you. For what? For giving me a chance to survive my own mistakes. For not destroying me completely when you could have. For protecting Tyler, even though it meant protecting part of me too. Mitchell said nothing, waiting for her to continue. I understand now what I threw away. I understand the kind of man you are and the kind of woman I failed to be. I can't undo the damage I caused, but I want you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn forgiveness. From Tyler, from you, from the families I hurt by stealing from the foundation. Vera, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand the difference between a man who builds things and a man who destroys them. Christopher was a destroyer. You're a builder. I was too stupid to appreciate what I had. She hung up before Mitchell could respond. Later that night, as Mitchell checked on Tyler before going to bed, he found his son reading a book about military strategy. Another sign that the boy was developing the intellectual tools necessary to navigate a dangerous world. Good book. Sun Tzu. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you will never be defeated in 100 battles. Good advice. But remember, the best battles are the ones you never have to fight because your enemies know better than to challenge you. Tyler looked up from his book. Is that why no one bothers us anymore? Because they're afraid of what you might do. Partly. But mostly because they understand that attacking our family means facing consequences they can't survive. Good, Tyler said with finality. I like it when people leave us alone. As Mitchell turned off the lights and closed Tyler's door, he understood that he'd accomplished something more valuable than revenge or justice. He'd created a legacy of strength that would protect his son long after he was gone. The next morning brought news that Christopher Warren had been found dead in his prison cell, an apparent suicide by hanging. Federal investigators concluded that Warren had been unable to cope with the loss of his empire and the prospect of spending his life in prison. Mitchell felt no satisfaction at Warren's death, only a sense of completion. His enemy had been destroyed not by violence, but by the logical consequences of his own choices and actions. At Warren's funeral, a sparsely attended affair that drew more law enforcement officials than mourners, Vera appeared for the first time since her release from prison. She looked older, worn by experience, but there was something different in her bearing. Something harder and more honest than the polished facade she'd once worn. She approached Mitchell after the service, Tyler standing beside his father like a young soldier. Christopher's parents blame you for his death, she said quietly. They're entitled to their opinion. They're talking about revenge, about making you pay for destroying their son. Mitchell's expression didn't change, but Tyler moved slightly closer to his father, a gesture that spoke volumes about the boy's understanding of threats and protection. Let them talk, Mitchell said calmly. Talk is all they have left. Vera nodded, understanding that the Warren family had learned the same lesson she'd learned. Mitchell Roth was not a man who could be threatened or intimidated. He was a force of nature who responded to aggression with overwhelming retaliation. Tyler, she said, turning to her son, I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try to rebuild our relationship. If you're willing. Tyler studied his mother for a long moment, weighing her words against her past actions. I'm willing to try, but things will be different now. I know. I'll earn back your trust, or I won't. But I'll never stop trying. As Vera walked away, Tyler turned to his father. She's changed. Prison and consequences have a way of clarifying what matters. Do you think she'll keep her promises this time? Mitchell watched Vera disappear into the crowd of departing mourners. I think she understands that breaking another promise would be the last mistake she ever makes. Tyler nodded solemnly. At 13, he already understood that some lessons could only be learned once. The Roth family empire continued to expand over the following years, built on a foundation of strength, loyalty, and a certain knowledge that betrayal carried consequences that extended far beyond the immediate perpetrators. Mitchell never remarried, focusing his energy on raising Tyler and building a legacy that would endure. Tyler grew into a young man who combined his father's strategic mind with a deep understanding of justice and protection. And throughout the region, the name Roth became synonymous with a simple but powerful truth. Some men could be challenged, negotiated with, or intimidated. Mitchell Roth was not one of them. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.